Usually, when we talk about a blank canvas, there's this expectation of just, profound peace.
Right, absolutely.
Like, imagine stepping out into a winter woodland right after a heavy snowfall. The whole world is just muted.
Yeah, completely silent.
Exactly. It is frozen, completely silent, and almost melancholic in its beauty. But then you get on a train, you travel a few hours, and you step out of a concrete station into the absolute heart of a bustling metropolis.
Oh, man, yeah. The contrast is wild.
It really is. Suddenly, that pristine, silent canvas is just violently ripped away, and you are hit with a transition that our source material today describes as a complete, unapologetic sensory overload.
I mean, it is the absolute definition of jumping from the frying pan into the fire, sensorily speaking.
Totally.
You're moving from an environment that demands almost nothing of your cognitive processing to one that demands, well, everything simultaneously.
So true. And today we are looking at this fascinating source. It's a masterclass transcript from the Learning English podcast, and it dissects this exact sensory whiplash.
It's such a great text.
It really is. We're looking at a conversation between two people who are analyzing the transition from that palpable silence of the winter wilderness straight into the relentless kinetic energy of the metropolis.
Right, the urban jungle.
Exactly. And our mission for this deep dive today is to extract the ultimate toolkit in sensory vocabulary and observational skills from this text.
It's not just about passing a test, right?
Exactly. We are not just looking to memorize C2 level English words for the sake of a proficiency exam. We are looking at how to truly see, to truly hear, and to truly smell the world around you.
Yeah.
We are taking the overwhelming urban jungle and transforming it into a canvas that you, the listener, can vividly describe. So, okay, let's unpack this.
I love that setup.
Yeah.
Because, having the vocabulary to actually name what you are experiencing fundamentally shifts the mechanics of how you experience it.
Right.
The source text really operates on this premise that language is not just a descriptive tool, it is a perceptual filter.
Oh, I like that phrase, a perceptual filter.
Yeah, because if you lack the words to differentiate the chaos, the city just remains this massive blur.
Which means whether you live in the heart of a massive metropolis or you just visit one on occasion, having the precise language to articulate your environment completely changes your relationship with the space.
It totally does.
You stop being a passive victim of the city's intensity and you become an active observer. So, we are going to follow the logical progression of the source text, which begins with the very first thing that hits you when you walk out of that train station.
The staggering, shocking contrast of sound.
Yes. The text describes moving from those quiet woods to the auditory assault of the city.
Auditory assault. That's such a heavy phrase.
It really is.
When you step out of that tranquil, silent winter environment, your auditory processing is calibrated for absolute minimal input. You're listening for, like, the snap of a twig or the rustle of wind.
Right. Super low frequency stuff.
Plunging into the urban space, the source notes that the sheer noise actually strikes you physically.
Yeah.
But the text elevates the description of this noise by utilizing a very specific, highly descriptive word.
A cacophony.
Exactly. A cacophony.
It's a brilliant word because it doesn't just mean loud,
Right, because loud is merely a metric of volume. I mean, you can have a loud symphony, and it is beautiful.
Right, it's harmonious.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But cacophony, which the source points out, is a quintessential advanced vocabulary word in language learning frameworks. It captures a chaotic, jarring mixture of sounds.
It's all about the clash.
Yes. It is the distinct lack of harmony. And the text breaks down the specific ingredients of this cacophony to really illustrate the point.
Like the screeching of the subway brake.
The screeching brakes, the wailing of sirens, and that ambient hum of a million overlapping conversations.
It's the sheer layering of those frequencies that creates the cacophony. You have that incredibly high-pitched, metal-on-metal screech of the subway brakes cutting right through the middle, while a siren just wails unpredictably over the top of it.
It's so jarring.
And beneath it all, you have this relentless mid-frequency hum of humanity. But what I love is that the text doesn't stop at the surface level noise that travels through the air.
Right, it goes deeper.
Yeah, it dives deeper into the physical space.
Mm-hmm.
It mentions that underneath the overt cacophony, there is a persistent low-frequency vibration, the subterranean rumble of the transit system.
The subterranean rumble.
Yeah.
It acts as the acoustic foundation of the city.
Yeah.
The text highlights this because it forces the learner to recognize that sound in an urban environment isn't just something you hear. It is something you literally physically endure.
I read that and instantly recognized the sensation. It's like when you are standing on the pavement and you can feel the city vibrating in your teeth before your ears even register the approaching train.
Oh, absolutely.
It's structural. It is the purr of a massive, heavy engine right beneath your feet. But, I kind of want to push back on the source material's framing here.
Oh, really? How so?
Well, or at least I want to challenge the tension it sets up. The text initially calls all of this an auditory assault.
Right.
And an assault implies violence, hostility, a deliberate attack on your senses. Then, almost in the same breath, the source describes the subterranean rumble as a mechanical heartbeat.
Ah, I see where you're going.
Yeah, because to me, a heartbeat implies something entirely different. It implies nurture, rhythm, something that sustains a living organism. I mean, sirens and screeching brakes do not nurture you.
That's a fair point.
So is it actually an assault or is it a pulse? Because it almost feels like the text is overly romanticizing a really hostile environment.
Well, what's fascinating here is how the source material deliberately navigates that exact contradiction.
Okay, tell me more.
The text acknowledges it as an assault, definitely. But by comparing the city to a living, breathing organism with a mechanical heartbeat, it argues that the noise is not just random, malicious static.
It has a purpose.
Right. It has utility. It is the inevitable byproduct of millions of interconnected parts functioning together to keep the metropolis alive.
Okay, that makes sense.
If you just label it an assault and stop analyzing, you remain in a state of sensory distress. You miss the heartbeat completely. The text argues that using advanced vocabulary forces your brain to capture that duality, that the city is simultaneously abrasive and deeply rhythmically alive.
Okay, so the vocabulary is what allows you to find the order within the assault. That's really powerful.
It really is.
And once your ears adjust to that mechanical heartbeat and you stop bracing for impact with every siren, your brain finally has the bandwidth to start processing the physical container that is trapping and amplifying all this noise.
The architecture.
Exactly. The sound doesn't just exist in a vacuum, right? It is bouncing off the architecture. The physical space actually dictates the acoustic experience.
And that transition brings us directly into the visual landscape of the city, which the source text defines through the lens of architectural juxtaposition.
Juxtaposition is such a great word.
It is.
The text sets this up by reminding us of the winter woods, which had a very uniform visual language, skeletal trees, flat white snow, frozen lakes, everything just belonged together.
It was cohesive.
Right. The city, however, operates on visual friction.
Huge visual friction.
Yeah.
The source focuses heavily on the extreme visual contrasts that define the urban environment. We aren't just looking at isolated buildings here.
No.
We are looking at the intense, almost aggressive friction between them. The text paints this picture of monolithic glass and steel skyscrapers.
Yes, it describes them as towering oppressively overhead, reflecting blinding flashes of sunlight.
Monolithic is doing a lot of heavy lifting there.
It really is. The word monolithic implies something entirely unyielding, like a massive singular block of modern power that completely dominates the skyline.
Yeah.
And then, nestled right at the base of this oppressive glass monolith, the text points out that you will find an ornate, centuries-old cathedral, or, just a block away, a dilapidated, brutalist concrete apartment building.
Here's where it gets really interesting for me. When you picture that specific visual, the hyper-slick, reflective glass skyscraper, aggressively looming over an ancient, intricately carved stone cathedral. It is like navigating the city is equivalent to walking through a collapsed timeline.
Oh, wow, a collapsed timeline. I love that analogy.
Every corner you turn is a time travel portal where the ancient past and the hypermodern future are awkwardly forced to share the exact same piece of limited real estate.
That is such a vivid way to look at it, and that temporal collision is exactly what the text is getting at when it introduces the concept of the labyrinthine sprawl, isn't it?
Exactly. If we connect this to the bigger picture, the friction isn't just aesthetic, it's structural and historical, right? The source explicitly notes the clash between the antiquated and the avant-garde. You have this fierce collision between the desire for historical preservation and the relentless economic drive for modernization.
They are essentially fighting for space. The sleek glass and the old stone are locked in this permanent wrestling match for the sky, and that friction is what creates the maze on the ground.
And the text uses labyrinthine to perfectly capture the psychological effect of this layout.
Because it's so disorienting.
Yeah, think about it. Ancient city streets were originally designed for horses and foot traffic, winding organically over time.
Right.
When those same streets are forcibly adapted to accommodate monolithic skyscrapers and modern infrastructure, it creates a complex, often bewildering physical network.
Which naturally evokes a profound sense of getting lost. And I really appreciate that the source text acknowledges the duality of that feeling.
How so?
Well, it points out that getting lost in this labyrinthine sprawl can be either a thrilling adventure or an absolute nightmare, entirely depending on your disposition that specific moment.
Oh, for sure.
If you are 20 minutes late for a job interview, the labyrinth is your enemy. You're stressed, you're sweating.
Definitely a nightmare.
But if you are just wandering on a Sunday afternoon with a coffee, it is an explorer's paradise. But ultimately, these massive contrasting structures, the towering glass, the brutalist concrete, the ornate stone, they are just the banks of the river.
The banks of the river. That's an interesting way to phrase it.
Yeah, think about it. The architecture is static. It is the unmoving geology of the city that channels the movement of everything else.
Okay, I see.
It creates narrow straits where the pressure builds and wide plazas where things pool. To truly understand the city, you can't just stare at the riverbanks. You have to look at the rapids pouring through them.
Right, the movement.
You have to look at the fluid, kinetic energy that is filling that concrete container. You have to look at the people.
That makes total sense.
Yeah.
The architecture dictates the flow, but the human element is the current itself. And the source is adamant that if you want to elevate your observational vocabulary, there is no better practice than engaging in unabashed people watching from a pavement cafe.
Chronic, unapologetic people watching.
Yes.
I love that the text tackles this directly because it addresses a very common linguistic hurdle for a lot of learners. How do you describe a massive crowd of thousands of people without resorting to flat, cliched phrases?
All right, you want to avoid just saying, well, the city sure is busy today.
Probably, because that conveys zero texture.
The source provides a highly systematic methodology for this. It demands that the observer toggles between a macro and a micro perspective.
Macro and micro.
Yeah, you cannot capture the reality of the crowd by only looking at the whole, nor can you understand it by only looking at one person.
Okay, so let's start with the macro view. The text describes observing the sea of humanity during the peak intensity of rush hour.
It's quite a visual.
It really is. It
Yeah.
uses this incredibly powerful imagery of a relentless ebb and flow, comparing the crowd to a tidal wave of briefcases and trench coats.
By using terms like sea and tidal wave, the text illustrates how the macro view completely strips away human individuality.
You don't see faces anymore.
Right. When you zoom out, you are no longer looking at people. You are observing a sheer force of nature driven by single-minded determination. It is a massive momentum pouring through the architectural riverbanks we just discussed.
And then the source uses this brilliant oxymoron to sum up that macro movement: synchronized chaos.
Synchronized chaos. That's so good.
It's perfect. When you stand at an intersection during rush hour and watch the lights change, it visually registers as absolute chaos. You have hundreds of pedestrians moving in every conceivable direction, stepping off curbs, weaving around lampposts.
Total madness.
Right, and yet, despite this immense volume of bodies intercepting at high speeds, they rarely collide.
Synchronized chaos captures the underlying physical logic of the crowd.
But I have to ask you, based on how the text frames this metropolitan hustle, is this choreographed rhythm actually a learned survival skill of the urban jungle? Or is it just blind luck that we aren't all constantly crashing into each other on the pavement?
That's a fascinating question.
Because if you put 1,000 people from that quiet winter woodland into Times Square, I feel like they would be bouncing off each other like pinballs.
Well, the source heavily implies it is an acquired, highly sophisticated survival skill. It is an emergent behavior of the dense population.
So we adapt to it.
Yes. The text notes that there is an unspoken, choreographed rhythm to navigating the city. You learn how to read micro cues, like a slight shift in someone's shoulder or the trajectory of their gaze, to anticipate their path and adjust your own without even breaking stride.
It becomes instinctual.
Exactly. But the text is also quick to warn that while the macro view the synchronized chaos, the tidal wave gives you the sheer scale and physical dynamics of the city, the true descriptive gold lies in the micro-observations.
You have to break the illusion of the tidal wave. You have to zoom in.
Exactly. The challenge is to focus on the idiosyncrasies of individuals.
Idiosyncrasies, yes.
You have to consciously spend the cognitive energy to isolate a single drop of water within that tidal wave, turning a faceless mass into distinct, vivid vignettes.
And the source gives us two incredibly contrasting micro-examples to illustrate this point.
It does.
First, it isolates the harried executive. You picture someone frantically gesturing, barking sharp orders into a Bluetooth earpiece, their brow furrowed, completely absorbed in the high-stakes stress of the modern corporate world.
The executive represents the relentless modernization and the kinetic pressure of the city.
Right.
But then, positioned right next to them on the exact same stretch of pavement, the text highlights the bohemian street busker.
The busker, who the text describes as being entirely lost in a melodic reverie. It is architectural juxtaposition and applied directly to human beings.
That's a great connection.
You have the monolithic, high-pressure executive sharing oxygen with the ornate, historically timeless artist.
And by forcing the language learner to toggle between these views, zooming out to acknowledge the synchronized chaos of the tidal wave, and zooming in to articulate the specific idiosyncrasies of the busker's melodic reverie, the observer captures the true dynamic range of the landscape.
It's all about range.
Right. The text argues that this is how you turn a generic, overwhelming crowd into a gallery of vivid, highly specific paintings.
But when you actually execute this exercise, when you stop looking at the crowd as a blurry sea and you really focus intensely on these individual vignettes, it reveals a startling and somewhat melancholy truth about urban existence.
It gets quite deep here.
It really does. The text pivots here from a purely physical observation of movement into a profound sociological analysis.
It dives straight into the core contradiction of the metropolis, a concept the source explicitly names the paradox of urban solitude.
The paradox of urban solitude. It is a concept that is deeply counterintuitive until you actually experience it yourself. The fundamental question is, how is it physically possible to be surrounded by millions of human beings, to be literally swimming in a sea of humanity, and yet experience absolute isolating anonymity?
To illustrate the mechanics of this paradox, the text strategically moves the observer from the open pavement cafe into the most highly pressurized environment imaginable.
Oh boy.
The subway carriage.
You are descending back into the subterranean rumble.
Exactly. You are packed into a steel tube during rush hour. The text paints a visceral picture of being pressed shoulder to shoulder, hip to hip with complete strangers.
It's so claustrophobic.
You are physically closer to these individuals than you are to your closest friends on a normal day. And yet the text keenly observes everyone in that carriage is securely trapped inside their own impenetrable bubble.
The impenetrable bubble. It's a fascinating phrase because a bubble is incredibly fragile by nature, yet the text calls it impenetrable. It implies that it requires constant active maintenance to keep it intact.
Yes. And the source outlines the specific collective behaviors utilized to maintain these bubbles. It notes the rigid avoidance of eye contact.
Oh, the stare down at the floor?
Yep. It observed commuters deeply engrossed in their smartphones or, in the absence of a screen, adopting that universal urban defense mechanism, staring blankly into the middle distance, focusing on absolutely nothing.
So what does this all mean? Why are we doing this? I want to connect this back to our earlier discussion about the sensory overload and the auditory assault.
Okay, let's connect it.
Are we creating these impenetrable bubbles solely because the sensory input of the city is just too much to handle? Is the smartphone just a digital shield we hold up against the cacophony?
That's a really compelling theory.
Because if we actually acknowledge the humanity, the complex lives of every single person pressed against us in that subway car, our brains would completely short-circuit. It would be too much empathy, too much data.
This raises an important question about the nature of community in dense populations. The source touches upon this psychological defense mechanism by examining how it feels to actively observe it.
Yeah.
The text uses a very deliberate, slightly uncomfortable word to describe the act of people watching in this environment. Voyeuristic.
Voyeuristic. That implies a transgression. It implies you are looking at something highly private, something that the subject does not want you to see.
Which perfectly encapsulates the paradox. You are in a highly public space, yet you are witnessing people in moments of profound, enforced privacy.
Wow.
The text explains that as an outsider, when you consciously drop your own impenetrable bubble to observe others, it feels voyeuristic because you are peering into transient microcosms of society.
You are witnessing a mutual, unspoken agreement of invisibility. We all agree to pretend the others don't exist, to give each other psychological breathing room in a space where there is zero physical breathing room. And when you watch the harried executive barking into the phone on the subway, or the teenager silently crying, or the couple silently arguing, you become a spectator to 1,000 unfolding dramas that you will never know the conclusion to.
And the text frames this lack of conclusion as an ephemeral quality. These encounters, these glimpses into other lives, are entirely fleeting.
Ephemeral, here and then gone.
Right. They vanish the exact second the subway doors slide open and the synchronized chaos spills everyone back out onto the platform.
Poof, vanished.
The source highlights that capturing this ephemeral quality, finding the exact English words to describe the profound, isolating solitude of being physically crushed against a stranger while remaining entirely detached, is the ultimate test of advanced language mastery.
It's not just about describing the train.
No, it requires nuance, empathy, and a vocabulary of emotion, not just physical description.
You have to articulate the invisible walls between people. So at this point in the deep dive, we have mapped out the sounds, the mechanical heartbeat, the subterranean rumble, the cacophony.
Right.
We have mapped the visual architecture, the labyrinthine sprawl, the monolithic skyscrapers, the collapsed timeline.
Yep.
We have mapped the human movement, the synchronized chaos, the impenetrable bubbles, the ephemeral voyeurism. But there is one sense remaining.
Yes.
And I would argue that it is the sense that completely bypasses all of this high-level intellectualizing. It cuts right through the impenetrable bubbles and hits your reptilian brain on a purely visceral level the moment you take a breath on the street.
We are turning to the olfactory landscape.
Yes, the smells.
The source dedicates significant attention to the smells of this city.
The text expertly draws a parallel back to the beginning. It notes that in the countryside, we tend to romanticize the olfactory experience.
Definitely.
We think of the crisp scent of pine needles or the comforting, distant smell of wood smoke. It is consistent, and it is universally pleasant. The city, however, is categorized by the source as an olfactory roller coaster.
A roller coaster is the perfect analogy because the text is describing a literal physical whiplash of the senses.
Whiplash was right.
It details how you can be walking down a single short city block and be assaulted by wildly contrasting odors in rapid, unpredictable succession.
The text gives this incredibly vivid, almost jarring example. It describes walking past a street food vendor and being enveloped in the mouth-watering, warm, savory aroma of roasting caramelized nuts.
Oh, that's the best smell.
It's an inviting, comforting smell that makes you want to stop and linger. And then, seamlessly, literally a second later, you cross the intersection and are hit with the pungent, acrid stench of exhaust fumes and stagnant, fetid water pooling in the gutter.
The source specifically highlights the words pungent and acrid.
Pungent and acrid.
Yeah, these are not just synonyms for bad. They describe harsh, biting odors, smells that have a physical, chemical bite to them, smells that actually sting the back of your throat and force you to recoil.
It really is a whiplash. Experiencing the olfactory roller coaster of the city is kind of like rapidly flicking through television channels.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, or like walking blindly through invisible tripwires of microclimates. You cross one invisible line on the pavement, and you are in a cozy, warm bakery environment.
Right.
You take 2 more steps, cross another invisible tripwire, and you are standing in an industrial, gritty wasteland of diesel pollution. And you have zero control over the sequence. The environment just forces these intense chemical memories upon you.
The invisible tripwires metaphor aligns perfectly with the text's assertion that the city is an exercise in extremes.
Extremes in every sense.
However, the source material is very careful not to paint this olfactory chaos as purely repugnant. It insists that despite the acrid exhaust and the pungent, stagnant water, there are redeeming, highly specific scents that make this roller coaster compelling.
It specifically mentions the espresso.
Yes, the ubiquitous, rich smell of freshly ground espresso spilling out from the open doors of corner cafes. The text argues that there is a distinct charm to this chaotic mixture.
A charm to the chaos.
In fact, it distills the entire olfactory experience into a single, masterful phrase. The intoxicating blend of grime and glamour.
Grime and glamour, that really is the core defining tension of the metropolis, isn't it? And it is represented perfectly right there in the smells.
It is the ultimate synthesis of the urban experience. The text explicitly states that if a learner wants to achieve true descriptive fluency, what language frameworks define as C2 level mastery, they must be able to articulate this specific tension.
You have to hold both realities at once.
Exactly. You have to possess the vocabulary to capture the relentless grit of the pavement, the acrid exhaust, the pungent water, and immediately contrast it with the polished veneer of high-end boutiques or the comforting, luxurious aroma of that fresh espresso.
Right.
The city is magnetic not despite the grime, but precisely because it contains both the intense grime and the soaring glamour, often occupying the exact same square foot of space.
It's the architectural juxtaposition we talked about earlier, but translated for your nose.
Oh, that's a brilliant way to phrase it.
The brutalist concrete is the exhaust fumes, and the ornate cathedral is the roasting nuts. But, analyzing all of this rich sensory vocabulary, understanding the words like cacophony, labyrinthine, ephemeral, acrid, idiosyncrasy, it is completely useless if it just remains an intellectual exercise.
Right, it can't just be theory.
Exactly. If you just nod along to this deep dive, close the transcript, and go back to telling people your trip to the city was really noisy and busy.
Which is exactly why the source material does not end with theoretical analysis. It concludes with an ultimate assignment.
The ultimate assignment.
A practical, demanding application of everything that has been discussed.
It's time to move from theory to practice. Let's break down this ultimate assignment for the listener right now. What is the specific challenge presented at the end of the text?
The challenge is designed as an exercise in active, uncomfortable immersion.
Uncomfortable immersion, okay.
The text instructs the listener to visit the absolute busiest, most congested area of their local town or city. Once you are in the thick of the synchronized chaos, you are tasked with finding a stationary vantage point.
Like a park bench.
Yeah, the text suggests finding a balcony overlooking a plaza, or just a bench at a major intersection. And then you must commit to spending 20 uninterrupted minutes doing nothing but absorbing the environment.
20 minutes.
20 minutes. And the most crucial, difficult instruction in the entire text is this. You are not allowed to write anything down initially.
Oh, wow.
You must simply sit there and let the overwhelming sensory overload wash over you.
I want to pause right there and ask you, the listener, a very direct question.
Yeah.
When was the last time you sat completely still for 20 minutes in a truly chaotic, busy, public place and just observed it?
It's harder than it sounds.
Without looking at your phone, without retreating into that impenetrable bubble of digital distraction we analyzed earlier. 20 minutes is a remarkably long time to subject yourself to the cacophony, the glaring visual juxtaposition, and the pungent smells without reaching for a shield.
It's going to feel like an eternity.
It is guaranteed to be uncomfortable at first.
But it is designed to be uncomfortable because it forces a state of deep, sustained observation. The text argues that only by pushing through that initial urge to retreat can you move past the shock of the sensory assault.
So you have to write it out.
Yes. After 10 minutes, your brain stops panicking and starts noticing the underlying patterns. You start to hear the mechanical heartbeat beneath the screech.
Right.
You start to see the choreographed rhythm of the crowd instead of just a blurry tidal wave.
You start to see the invisible tripwires, and then after those 20 minutes of just drowning in the environment and letting your brain process the raw data, what is step 2 of the challenge?
Step 2 is the act of creation. The challenge asks you to distill that entire chaotic 20-minute sensory experience into a single, highly cohesive paragraph using English.
Just one paragraph.
Just one, but it has to be dense. The text specifically requests that you intentionally try to capture the juxtaposition of the architecture, the kinetic energy of the crowd, and that underlying ambient hum.
And it provides a mandatory word bank to force you out of your comfort zone, right?
It does. It explicitly challenges the learner to construct this paragraph utilizing the core vocabulary explored in the transcript. Words like monolithic, ephemeral, cacophony, and idiosyncrasy.
You have to weave together the monolithic skyscrapers, the ephemeral encounters on the subway platform, the harsh cacophony of the traffic, and the specific idiosyncrasy of the street busker.
It's a puzzle.
It forces the learner to move from passive recognition, where you simply understand these words when reading a book, to active, sophisticated production. You have to wield these precise instruments yourself to carve out your own description, a reality.
And this leads to perhaps the most beautiful, defining summary statement in the entire source text.
I think I know which one you mean.
The authors emphasize that this challenge, this deliberate effort to embrace complex vocabulary and push through the fear of making grammatical mistakes, is not just about language acquisition. It is about cultivating the ability to not just speak English, but to paint with it.
I paint with English.
To take the raw, chaotic, blank canvas of your urban experience and transform it into a vivid, heavily textured masterpiece using advanced vocabulary as your palette.
That is just so good.
The text ends with this incredibly strong encouragement to keep pushing linguistic boundaries, to seek out the complex words, and to boldly make mistakes in the pursuit of painting a sharper, clearer picture of the world around you.
To paint with English. What an incredibly empowering, active way to look at language learning. It's not a chore, you know. It's an art form that fundamentally alters how you process your own life. So let's quickly synthesize the incredible journey this source material has taken us on today. We started by shattering the muted silence of the winter woods and plunging headfirst into the jarring cacophony of the city.
The auditory assault.
Yes, and we learned how naming the noise allows us to listen past it and find the persistent subterranean rumble and the mechanical heartbeat of the metropolis. We looked up and analyzed how the monolithic glass skyscrapers relentlessly clash with ancient stone cathedrals,
Creating that labyrinthine sprawl.
exactly, the architectural juxtaposition that serves as the physical banks for the river of humanity.
And then we observed the fluid dynamics of that river, toggling between the macro and the micro.
Right, the zooming in and out.
Watching the tidal wave of commuters moving in a brilliantly choreographed, synchronized chaos, and then zooming in to isolate the specific idiosyncrasies of the harried executive and the bohemian busker.
We grappled with the profound sociological paradox of urban solitude, too.
Yes, acknowledging the mutual social contract of the impenetrable bubbles we construct on the subway and the ephemeral voyeuristic nature of watching those fleeting dramas unfold.
And finally, we rode the unpredictable olfactory roller coaster, experiencing the physical whiplash of walking through invisible tripwires from the warm, inviting aroma of roasting nuts to the acrid, pungent sting of exhaust, ultimately recognizing that the city's true magnetism lies in its intoxicating blend of grime and glamour.
It's all connected.
To you listening, we hope you realize that you now possess the conceptual toolkit to completely change how you observe and articulate your daily commute. You aren't just surviving a blurry, noisy urban jungle anymore. You have the precise words to describe its very pulse.
But before we leave you to take on that 20-minute observation challenge in your own city, there is a final, lingering idea I'd like to offer. Something provocative to mull over that builds directly on the core themes of the source material.
Oh, please leave us with something to think about.
So, the source text heavily emphasizes observing the physical cityscape and the physical people moving through it. It demands we find words for the glass, the steel, the briefcases, the acrid smells.
Right.
But we spent significant time dissecting the paradox of urban solitude and how people increasingly retreat into their smartphones and digital spaces to cope with the sensory overload.
Yeah, the digital shield.
If that paradox continues to deepen and the impenetrable bubble becomes our primary residence, what happens to the concept of the urban jungle?
Yeah, that's interesting.
Think about it. In 50 years, will our most advanced C2-level sensory vocabulary still be used to describe the friction and cacophony of physical architecture and pavement crowds?
Probably not.
Or will the physical city just become an ignored backdrop, and we will need to invent entirely new, incredibly nuanced words to describe the labyrinthine sprawl of the virtual cities we've built entirely inside those impenetrable screens?
Oh, wow. Are we going to be painting intricate pictures of virtual labyrinths while blindly walking past physical monolithic skyscrapers? Will the physical cacophony just become white noise to the digital one? That is a profoundly unsettling yet fascinating thought to take with you on your next commute.
Something to ponder.
The canvas is always changing, which means we have to keep observing, keep describing, and keep learning. Thanks for diving deep with us today. Until next time. Have you ever found yourself just standing on a rain-slicked city street at midnight?
Oh, absolutely.
Right, like you're just looking down the avenue, the traffic has finally died down, and you can actually feel this palpable atmospheric shift happening all around you.
Yeah, the whole energy changes.
Exactly. You take it all in and you desperately want to describe that cinematic, heavy feeling in your chest, but you end up struggling to find the precise words to capture it.
It's so frustrating.
It really is. It's like you have this incredibly complex emotion, this vivid scene in front of you, but the language available to you just feels, completely flat.
Well, it is a universally frustrating experience. And, I mean, it speaks to a very specific gap in our cognitive toolkit.
A gap? How do you mean?
Well, we possess this sensory understanding of our environment that far outpaces our linguistic capacity to articulate it. We feel the complexity of the urban environment vibrating all around us, but...
I just can't say it.
Right. When we open our mouths, we can only verbalize the absolute basics.
Yeah.
The buildings are tall, the street is wet, the lights are bright.
Yeah, that feeling of grasping for words is exactly what we're doing a deep dive into today.
It's a great topic.
I think so too. We're looking at a fascinating excerpt from an advanced English language learning discussion. It focuses on the high-level vocabulary required to accurately describe modern urban environments.
And it's not just about sounding smarter.
Not at all. The mission of this deep dive is to explore how upgrading your vocabulary from everyday adjectives to highly nuanced concepts, how that doesn't just change how you sound, it literally changes what your brain allows you to see in your own city.
That's the crucial part. Language is not just a tool for describing the world after the fact.
Right.
It is the very lens through which we interpret reality. When you acquire a more sophisticated vocabulary, you are fundamentally equipping your brain with new conceptual categories.
So you're building new boxes to put things in.
Exactly. You begin to see patterns, social tensions, and physical atmospheres that were completely invisible to you yesterday.
Just because you didn't have the words for them?
Yes. Purely because you didn't have the linguistic framework to isolate them. I mean, you can't actively observe a phenomenon if your brain doesn't have a folder to file it in.
That makes so much sense. I was actually thinking about this in terms of like television resolutions.
Does I like that?
Yeah, so imagine you've spent your entire life watching movies on an old, chunky, standard definition TV.
Okay, yeah, like an old CRT monitor.
Exactly. You know what's going on, you follow the plot, you can easily identify the main characters.
Sure.
Navigating a city with a basic foundational vocabulary is exactly like that. You get from point A to point B, it gets the job done.
You're missing the details.
Right.
Yeah.
But acquiring these advanced descriptors we're going to explore today, it is like suddenly upgrading to a massive 4K resolution OLED screen.
That is a perfect analogy.
Yeah.
The underlying physical reality hasn't changed at all, but the density of the information you can process increases exponentially.
Yeah. You aren't just seeing a city anymore. You are seeing the grit embedded in the brickwork, the specific way theatrical shadows stretch across a damp alleyway,
The fractured reflections in the potholes.
Yes, exactly. You start recognizing the invisible socioeconomic layers stacked on top of each other that you were previously, just walking right past.
The 4K upgrade doesn't change the movie. It radically alters your capacity to experience it.
Exactly. So to really test that 4K resolution, the source material suggests we have to look at the city not as a collection of static buildings, but as a pulsating ecosystem.
A living, breathing entity.
Right. And it goes through distinct observable phases. And the most dramatic phase shift to observe, the one that requires the most linguistic dexterity to truly capture, is the transition from day to night.
Oh, absolutely. Let's zoom in on that transit.
Because it's so easy to just say, it gets dark and the streetlights come on.
Which completely misses the psychological shift.
Totally. The source describes the transition from day to night as a complete metamorphosis of the urban landscape.
And metamorphosis is the perfect anchor word here.
Because it implies such a deep change, right?
Exactly. It implies a change that is profound, structural, and biological. I mean, when a caterpillar becomes a butterfly, it doesn't just put on a different coat.
Right. Its whole body changes.
Its entire cellular structure dissolves and rearranges itself into something functionally different. The city undergoes a very similar fundamental transformation at dusk.
It really does, because during the daylight hours, the urban environment is characterized by this frenetic, business-driven energy.
It's a cacophony.
A cacophony, yes. It is dominated by commerce, rigid efficiency, and relentless movement.
But then the sun goes down,
Yeah.
and that rigid daytime energy just evaporates.
It does. The atmosphere shifts into something deeply atmospheric and clandestine.
Now, clandestine is a word that carries an incredible amount of psychological weight.
Let's unpack that a bit.
Sure. So a clandestine meeting is one held in the shadows, purposefully hidden from public scrutiny. By describing the nocturnal city as clandestine, you are acknowledging that the loss of sunlight, literally and metaphorically, provides cover.
Cover for what exactly?
So an entirely different side of human nature to emerge. I mean, think about it. The daytime demands absolute transparency, professionalism, and conformity.
You have to act a certain way in the office.
Right. But the night offers anonymity. It offers the freedom to hide or to be someone else entirely.
And the lighting of the city completely shifts to support that clandestine feeling, too.
Oh, the lighting is everything.
Yeah, the harsh, revealing glare of the sun is gone, and it's replaced by this highly curated, artificial, neon-drenched glow.
It's very cinematic.
It is. You have the sodium street lamps casting that weird, sickly orange light on the pavement, mixed with the pulsating, kaleidoscopic luminescence of giant digital billboards.
It creates these deep theatrical shadows.
Exactly like a classic film noir. It gives the whole city a surreal, hyper-realistic quality.
Well, think about the mechanics of film noir lighting and why it feels so hyper-realistic.
Okay, yeah. Yeah.
In those classic movies, lighting isn't used to illuminate a room so you can see clearly. It's used to create psychological tension.
Oh, interesting.
Shadows are deployed to obscure identities, while a single neon sign cuts through the darkness in a way that feels, honestly, almost aggressive.
Yeah, that makes sense.
When your city is bathed in that intermittent glare and kaleidoscopic luminescence, it ceases to be a functional, practical space. It becomes a stage.
A stage? Wow.
And the surreal quality comes from the fact that this lighting is entirely unnatural. It highlights very specific elements, like a wet patch of pavement, a reflective glass window, a puff of steam from a grate.
While plunging the rest of the street into absolute obscurity.
Exactly. It forcibly curates your vision.
And because the stage changes so dramatically, the actors on the stage change too. You have this massive population shift.
The commuters go home.
Right. The harried commuters, the people rushing with their briefcases, checking their watches, driven by that frenetic daytime energy, they all retreat to the suburbs or their apartments.
And in their place, the nocturnal denizens emerge to take over the ecosystem.
The source material really highlights this contrast.
Because the contrast between the commuter and the nocturnal denizen is structurally vital to understanding the city's dual nature.
How so?
You are watching a shift from the pursuit of professional survival to the pursuit of escapism. The daytime is defined by rigid obligation, but the nighttime is defined by desire.
The atmosphere turns hedonistic.
Hedonistic, social, and inherently rebellious against the structure of the day.
That actually brings up a quintessential idiom for understanding urban life that they mentioned, the rat race.
The defining feature of the day.
Exactly. It's this relentless, exhausting, fiercely competitive struggle for wealth or power with absolutely no ultimate satisfaction.
The metaphor of the rat race is bleak, but incredibly accurate regarding urban psychology.
It paints a pretty grim picture.
It paints a picture of a maze, where the participants are sprinting as fast as humanly possible, fighting each other for tiny scraps of cheese, entirely unaware that the maze itself is designed to keep them trapped.
Trapped in a cycle of perpetual motion.
Right. There's no finish line. The maze just gets more complicated.
The source provides a great quote for this. After a decade of climbing the corporate ladder, he became thoroughly disillusioned with the ceaseless churn of the metropolitan rat race.
Ceaseless churn. That is such a visceral, almost violent pairing of words.
It really is. I want to break that down.
Let's do it. Ceaseless implies an unstoppable, infinite duration, a total lack of mercy.
It just never stops.
Never. While churn evokes a violent mechanical agitation. I mean, think of water in an industrial turbine, or milk being violently whipped into butter.
So when you combine those words to describe the metropolis...
You aren't just saying the city is busy or crowded.
Yeah.
You are conceptualizing the city as an indifferent machine that violently processes human energy without ever stopping to rest.
Wow.
It perfectly captures the profound psychological exhaustion of the daytime metropolis.
Okay, wait, hold on. I want to push back on this a little bit.
Okay, go for it.
I want to challenge this neat, tidy division between the exhausting daytime and the rebellious nighttime.
What's your angle?
Well, we set up this dichotomy where daytime is the soul-crushing rat race, and nighttime is this hedonistic escapism for the nocturnal denizens, right?
That is how the source frames it initially, yes.
But look at the nocturnal atmosphere. It's all about clubbing, status, getting into the right venues, wearing the right designer clothes.
Being seen under the right neon lights by the right people.
Exactly. So how is that escapism? Aren't those nocturnal denizens just participating in a different kind of exhausting, highly competitive social rat race?
That's a great point.
They're just running the maze under neon and sodium lamps instead of office fluorescence.
You know, that is the exact trap of the word escapism. And it's brilliant that you caught it.
Right, because it doesn't feel like an escape at all.
Because it isn't. The underlying mechanism, that ceaseless churn of competition, remains absolutely constant. But the currency of the realm changes at dusk.
The currency.
Yeah. During the day, the currency is professional advancement, capital, and corporate efficiency. But at night, the currency shifts to social capital, aesthetic appeal, exclusivity, and access.
So they haven't escaped the maze at all. They just changed the wallpaper and dimmed the lights.
Exactly. And that level of critical analysis is the entire point of upgrading your vocabulary.
Because it lets you see that.
Yes. By deeply understanding the mechanics embedded in a phrase like the rat race, you can begin to identify its presence even when the superficial circumstances have undergone a metamorphosis.
Even when the lighting and the clothes change.
Right. The city might feel clandestine and rebellious at night, but the hyper-competitive nature of the urban ecosystem never actually sleeps. It just wears a more glamorous mask.
Okay, so you have this tense, hyper-competitive social rat race happening under the kaleidoscopic neon lights.
Setting the scene.
Yeah, but then the physical atmosphere breaks. A sudden summer storm rolls in, and the city's visual and sensory canvas splinters into something entirely new.
The rain changes everything.
It does. The neon isn't just above you anymore. It's suddenly shattered all over the pavement.
This is where we move from analyzing the sociology of the city to analyzing its physical textures and sensory details.
Which the source does beautifully.
It does. And to do that, we have to draw a stark contrast between rural weather and urban weather.
Because rain in the country is a fundamentally different physical event than rain in a metropolis.
Completely different.
Yeah.
Rain in the country means trudging through waterlogged mud. The earth absorbs it. It's earthy, it's messy, it's soft.
But in the city, rain turns the concrete into a reflective canvas.
The material interaction dictates the aesthetic experience.
Right.
The rural earth is porous, it drinks the rain.
Yeah.
But the city is constructed almost entirely of impenetrable surfaces: asphalt, concrete, tempered glass, steel.
So the water has nowhere to go.
Exactly, it just sits on the surface. A sudden downpour makes the asphalt slick with precipitation.
No, slick with precipitation does so much more heavy lifting than just saying the road is wet.
Because wet is merely a state of being.
Right, it's just a fact.
But slick with precipitation emphasizes the physical texture, the danger, and the actual presence of the water coating the environment like a skin.
It's very evocative.
And what happens visually when that impenetrable slick asphalt meets the clandestine neon lighting we were just dissecting?
Oh, it turns into a massive shimmering mirror.
Yes.
Every headlight, every brake light, every traffic signal is fractured and reflected across the pavement. The text says it turns the streets into an impressionistic painting.
Which is a beautiful way to phrase it.
It is. I visualize it like the wet asphalt acting as this massive horizontal prism, or maybe a shattered camera lens laid flat on the ground.
I love that analogy.
It takes the solid, blinding lights of the cars and the digital billboards and just shatters them into this moving, bleeding piece of art right beneath people's feet.
The invocation of an impressionistic painting is really vital to understanding this visual shift.
How so?
Well, think about the French Impressionist movement, Claude Monet, Pierre-Auguste Renoir.
The Burley paintings, right?
Essentially, yeah. They completely abandoned the attempt to paint a scene with perfect, rigid photographic realism. Instead, they used small, visible, fluid brushstrokes to capture the feeling of light, the movement of the air, the passage of time.
So they were painting the feeling, not just the objects.
Exactly. By describing the fractured reflections of headlights on wet asphalt as impressionistic, you are elevating a dry weather report into a profound emotional and visual experience.
You aren't just seeing traffic backed up at a red light.
No, you're seeing raw strokes of crimson, amber, and stark white light bleeding into the dark, slick canvas of the street. It elevates the mundane annoyance of rain into the realm of high art.
And the transformation isn't just visual, is it?
Not at all.
It engages the sense of smell, which is arguably the most powerful, visceral memory trigger we possess as humans.
Oh, definitely.
A summer rainstorm in the city brings out a very specific scent. The source calls it urban petrichor.
Petrichor is one of the most beautiful words in the English language.
It really is. What's the origin of it?
Linguistically, it combines the Greek words petra, meaning stone, and ichor, which in Greek mythology was the golden, ethereal fluid flowing in the veins of the gods.
Wow, that's intense.
It is. In a general sense, it refers to the pleasant, earthy scent produced when rain falls on dry soil.
But urban petrichor is an entirely different chemical concoction.
Very different.
Because in the city, you aren't smelling soil and crushed leaves. You are smelling hot, dust-coated concrete rapidly cooling down.
It's highly distinct.
It is. It's slightly metallic, highly pungent, but incredibly oddly refreshing.
Well, if we break down the actual chemistry and physics of urban petrichor, it tells the story of the city's friction.
The friction, like the wear and tear.
Exactly. The metallic and pungent notes you are smelling. That is aerosolized exhaust fumes, microparticles of rubber from tires, brake dust, and the ambient urban grime that settles into the microscopic pores of the concrete during a dry spell.
That sounds kind of gross when you put it like that.
It does. But when the rain hits that hot surface, it traps tiny air bubbles, which then burst upwards, kicking those microscopic particles into the air as aerosols for you to breathe in.
Which sounds absolutely toxic when you list the ingredients: brake dust, tire rubber, and exhaust. But anyone who lives in a concrete jungle knows that smell, and it genuinely feels like a reset button for your lungs.
Because it is inextricably linked with physiological relief.
Relief from the heat.
Yes. And this brings us to a brilliant pairing of concepts in the source text. To understand the relief of urban petrichor, you have to understand the suffering that precedes it.
Which they call the urban heat island effect.
Right.
Because in the dead of summer, cities crap heat like a massive concrete oven. It results in this oppressive humidity and an atmosphere that feels entirely stifling.
The physics of the urban heat island effect are relentless.
It's just so hot.
Buildings, skyscrapers, and endless miles of black asphalt absorb and retain solar radiation at a massively higher rate than natural landscapes do.
And there's no breeze.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Tall buildings block the wind, preventing natural cooling. So the city literally becomes a thermal battery, radiating intense heat back out into the air long after the sun has gone down.
Which creates that oppressive humidity.
And that phrase, oppressive humidity, perfectly captures the physiological and psychological toll this takes on the human body.
Because oppressive doesn't just mean hot.
Right. It means weighing heavily on the mind or spirits, causing depression or severe discomfort. The heat isn't just a temperature. It feels like a physical weight pressing down on your chest, restricting your breathing.
So when that sudden downpour finally happens, the rain provides this visceral, fleeting relief from that stifling, oven-like atmosphere.
This perfectly illustrates why combining scientific terminology with sensory language deeply enriches our understanding of the environment.
It's a great toolkit.
It is. The urban heat island effect explains the mechanical physics of the suffering. Oppressive humidity describes the psychological feeling of the suffering, and urban petrichor captures the exact sensory experience of the relief.
I really want you, listening to this right now, to place yourself in this memory.
It's a great exercise.
Yeah, recall a time you were walking through a city during a sweltering, windless summer afternoon. You're sweating, the air is thick, and then the sky suddenly bruises over and cracks open.
You can almost feel it.
Right. Remember that specific metallic, pungent smell of the hot pavement instantly hissing and cooling beneath your shoes? Now, recognize how having the word petrichor and knowing the mechanics of the heat island effect actually elevates that everyday memory.
It gives a frame to the painting.
It really does.
It transforms you from a passive victim of the weather into an active, engaged observer of a highly complex atmospheric phenomenon.
You aren't just getting caught in the rain.
No, you are witnessing the thermal dynamics of a pulsating ecosystem rapidly resetting itself.
Witnessing the thermal dynamics. I really like that phrase. But you know, the ecosystem of the city isn't just defined by its atmospheric weather and its neon lights.
There's much more to it.
There is. Just as the rain washes away the oppressive heat to reveal a shimmering, reflective layer of the city's streets, walking just 3 or 4 blocks away from those glittering commercial districts reveals hidden, often highly uncomfortable socioeconomic layers.
It's a stark contrast.
The city is a canvas of wealth and poverty pressing right up against each other.
This is a critical pivot in how we analyze the urban environment in this deep dive.
We're shifting gears.
We are. We are moving from how the city feels sensorily to how the city functions sociologically as a habitat for human beings.
Okay, let's get into it.
Specifically, we have to examine the drastic, often violent socioeconomic changes that can occur from one street corner to the next.
Right, you walk a few blocks and the entire landscape changes. The vocabulary we use to describe this transition revolves around one highly charged concept.
Yeah.
Gentrification.
A very heavy word.
It is. The Stars defines gentrification as the process where derelict or working-class urban areas are renovated, which leads to an influx of affluent residents, higher property values, and inevitably, the displacement of the original lower-income community.
It is essential to approach this topic purely through the lens of language today, treating gentrification as a linguistic battleground.
Right, we're not taking a political stance here.
Exactly. The source material presents it as a double-edged sword. And to truly utilize advanced vocabulary, we had to impartially examine the words weaponized by both competing perspectives.
Let's examine the first edge of that sword, the vocabulary of the revitalization argument.
Okay.
From this perspective, the focus is on repairing crumbling infrastructure. You see dilapidated, dangerous warehouses being purposefully repurposed into chic loft apartments, artisanal coffee roasteries, and boutique fitness studios.
Notice the heavy connotations of the adjectives and verbs used in this framing.
Like revitalization.
Right, it literally stems from the Latin root for life. It means bringing something back to life. It implies that the neighborhood, in its previous state, was dead or dying.
That's a strong assumption.
It is. And words like crumbling and dilapidated are carefully chosen to suggest danger, severe neglect, and a desperate, urgent need for outside intervention.
Which justifies the changes.
Exactly. Conversely, words like chic and artisanal imply high sophistication, meticulous care, and superior quality.
So the vocabulary of revitalization paints a very specific narrative arc.
A story of rescue, safety, and undeniable improvement.
But then you flip the sword over to the other edge and you encounter the homogenization counter-argument.
The other side of the coin.
Yeah, and this perspective completely rejects the rescue narrative. It argues that idiosyncratic mom-and-pop stores, the places that have been there for 40 years, are systematically priced out through skyrocketing rent.
You get pushed out.
And they are then replaced by ubiquitous, multinational corporate franchises. The result, according to this side, is that the neighborhood loses its authentic grit and becomes sterile and sanitized.
The linguistic shift here is fascinating. Let's look at homogenization.
Okay, what does that imply?
Well, it's the process of making things uniform or entirely similar. Think of homogenized milk.
Where it's all blended together.
Right, the fat molecules are aggressively broken down and blended, so every single drop tastes exactly the same, stripping away any natural variation.
So in urban terms,
it implies a devastating loss of diversity. Idiosyncratic means quirky, highly unique, possessing an individual, irreplaceable character.
Like that weird little bookstore on the corner.
Yes. When idiosyncratic institutions are replaced by ubiquitous franchises, meaning entities that appear everywhere simultaneously, like a massive global coffee chain, the neighborhood loses its distinct geographical identity.
It just becomes a carbon copy of everywhere else?
Precise.
I want to really zero in on the final descriptors used for the result of this homogenization: sterile and sanitized.
Okay, let's look at those.
Why do those words carry such a negative connotation in this context? I want to challenge this.
Go ahead.
Isn't cleanliness exactly what city planners, mayors, and residents strive for? I mean, if sanitizing a neighborhood means there's no garbage on the street, the buildings are up to fire code, the rat population is controlled, and the crime rate drops.
Sure.
Why does achieving that sanitized environment suddenly mean the tragic death of its organic character? Why do we romanticize authentic grit?
That is the crux of the entire sociological debate, and it comes down to what makes a city rather than a corporate theme park.
Corporate theme park. Interesting.
To be sanitized in a medical or hygienic context literally means to be made clean by destroying harmful bacteria.
Which is good for a hospital.
Right. But in a sociological urban context, sanitized means aggressively removing anything that might be offensive, challenging, unpredictable, or raw.
It's like taking sandpaper and just rounding off all the sharp edges of the neighborhood so nobody can accidentally bump into anything uncomfortable.
Precisely. When a neighborhood possesses authentic grit, it means it bears the visible, tangible marks of history, economic struggle, and organic, unfiltered human life.
It's lived in.
It might be loud, it might be messy, but it is undeniably real. When you sanitize a neighborhood to make it safe and appealing to affluent newcomers and real estate developers, you almost always erase the physical and cultural history of the people who lived there before.
That's a heavy price.
It is. The negative connotation of the word sterile is key here. In biology, a sterile environment is clean, yes, but it is fundamentally incapable of producing new life.
Oh, wow. I didn't think about it that way.
The profound critique embedded in the word homogenization is that by trying to make a neighborhood perfectly safe, clean, and massively profitable, you destroy the complex, messy, fertile ecosystem that made it culturally valuable in the first place.
You're trading character for comfort and trading history for profit.
That's the argument, yes.
And obviously not everyone agrees on which of those is more valuable, but this intense cultural battle against homogenization and sterility isn't just something felt quietly by displaced residents.
No, it's very visible.
It isn't just debated in sociology lectures. It is literally broadcasted in bright colors on the brick walls of the city itself. The tension spills out into the physical environment.
This moves us from the broad, abstract concept of gentrification to a very specific, tangible, visual manifestation of urban tension.
Which is street art.
Yes.
And right away, we are presented with a fascinating linguistic dichotomy in the text. Depending on your vocabulary, is street art considered vandalism or is it a subversive sociopolitical commentary?
This brings us right back to our core mission for today,
Right.
How the language you choose dictates your perception of reality.
Because the object on the wall is the same either way.
Exactly. The physical reality of the act is identical in both scenarios. A person applied spray paint to a brick wall in the middle of the night without the property owner's permission.
Right.
If you filter that reality through the vocabulary of property law and civic order, you call it vandalism.
And vandalism is defined as a crime.
It is inherently destructive. It is a nuisance that requires immediate erasure. But if you shift your vocabulary, you completely alter the reality of the object in front of you.
I want to look at how a high-level advanced vocabulary restructures this reality based on the text.
Let's read the excerpt.
Imagine reading this description. The brickwork was emblazoned with a vibrant, provocative mural that served as a poignant critique of consumerism.
Let's dissect the profound weight of those specific words.
Emblazoned is a great word.
It is. Emblazoned means to conspicuously, boldly inscribe or display a design. It implies deep pride and intentional visibility.
Like you emblazon a shield with a family crest.
Exactly. It is the exact opposite of a rushed, shameful tagging in a dark alleyway.
And the word provocative means the art is meticulously designed to provoke a specific reaction.
It wants you to feel something.
Right. It is meant to make you angry or thoughtful or highly uncomfortable. It's not just there to look pretty and match the aesthetic of the new artisanal coffee shop.
Then you have poignant, which is one of the most evocative words we have.
What does that mean exactly?
It means evoking a keen, sharp sense of sadness or regret. Therefore, a poignant critique isn't just an angry, thoughtless rebellion.
It's deeper than that.
It is a deeply felt, emotionally resonant, highly intelligent observation about the failures of society, in this specific case, about the hollow nature of consumerism.
So by utilizing words like provocative, poignant, and subversive, you elevate the entire description.
You change what it is.
Yeah. You aren't just acknowledging that there is unauthorized paint on a wall. You are actively, critically analyzing the human intent behind the paint.
Right.
When you use this vocabulary, the city transforms from a collection of defaced properties into an open-air gallery of dissent.
And this synthesis is the most powerful realization you can have about the urban landscape.
It really pulls it all together.
It does. The city is not just a collection of steel, glass, and concrete infrastructure. It is a wildly complex, pulsating ecosystem defined entirely by its extremes.
It is unimaginable wealth stacked directly on top of crushing poverty.
Exactly.
It is deafening noise coexisting with profound, crushing isolation. It is constant decay, immediately followed by rapid rebirth.
To operate at a high level of linguistic and cognitive proficiency, to truly understand the metropolis you live in, requires acknowledging and holding these massive contradictions in your mind simultaneously.
You have to hold both truths at once.
You have to be able to see the chic, revitalized loft apartment and simultaneously see the ghost of the displaced, idiosyncratic mom-and-pop store it replaced.
Yeah.
You have to be able to see the criminal vandalism and simultaneously read the poignant, subversive critique embedded within it.
You know, it makes me think of street art as the city's organic immune system.
Oh, I like where this is going.
Think about it. If gentrification acts to sanitize and sterilize a neighborhood, which, as we discussed, means removing the messiness and the bacteria to make it uniform and ubiquitous.
Right, making it perfectly clean.
Then these subversive, poignant, chaotic murals are the neighborhood's organic character violently fighting back.
The immune response.
Yes. The street art is the fever. It's the body rejecting the homogenization.
That analogy perfectly captures the dynamic. It positions the descent, the street art, not as a crime committed against the city, but as a vital biological function of the city, deployed to maintain its idiosyncratic identity.
But to perceive it as an immune response rather than just property damage.
You must possess the advanced vocabulary to conceptualize it.
And that is the challenge I want to extend to you listening right now.
It's a great challenge.
The next time you walk through your town, especially at night or during a storm, I want you to actively force yourself to use these words.
Don't just walk past it.
Right. Look at the graffiti on the side of a ubiquitous franchise, and don't just dismiss it as background noise. Actively try to decode its intent using this elevated framework.
Ask yourself questions about it.
Exactly. Ask yourself, is this a poignant critique? Is this subversive? Is this the organic grit of the city fighting against sterilization?
When you consciously apply these advanced concepts to your surroundings, you will find that your environment is constantly speaking to you in a highly complex language that you previously couldn't hear.
It's like turning on the subtitles for reality.
Beautifully put.
Let's take a deep breath and reflect on the journey we've been on today.
We covered a lot of ground.
We really did. We started by looking at how precise language unveils the city's nocturnal metamorphosis. We explored how the environment shifts from the ceaseless churn of a sunlit, exhausting rat race into a neon-drenched space of clandestine escapism.
Where the currency shifts from capital to social access.
Exactly. Then we examined the sensory canvas of the city. We broke down the material physics of how impenetrable asphalt becomes an impressionistic painting during a storm.
The visual shift is so striking.
And we explored how the heavy physical toll of the urban heat island affects oppressive humidity is briefly, beautifully shattered by the metallic, visceral relief of urban petrichor.
Such a great word.
Then we navigated the incredibly tense socioeconomic landscape, walking the razor's edge of the double-edged sword of gentrification.
Maintaining that linguistic neutrality.
Right. We weighed the revitalization of crumbling infrastructure against the tragic homogenization and sterilization of authentic grit. And finally, we read the poignant dissent emblazoned on the brick walls, uncovering the city as a complex, pulsating ecosystem defined by its extremes.
The overarching takeaway from all of this is that expanding your vocabulary is not just an academic exercise meant to help you pass a language test or sound smart at a dinner party.
It's much bigger than that.
Vocabulary is the literal architecture of your perception.
And that brings me to a final provocative thought I want to leave you with. Something for you to mull over on your own that builds on everything we've unpacked today.
What's on your mind?
Well, we've established that the advanced vocabulary we possess directly shapes our ability to perceive the nuances of our environment, right?
Yes, definitely.
But I want you to consider the inverse of that premise.
The profound danger of the absence of vocabulary.
Exactly. Think about it. If you lack the precise conceptual words for complex, slow-moving phenomena like gentrification or the loss of authentic grit or homogenization, does that lack of language actually blind you to these realities?
If you can't name it, can you see it?
Right. If you don't have the words to describe the metamorphosis of your own neighborhood as it is happening, are you fundamentally unable to see it until it's already too late?
That is a terrifying thought.
Do you just wake up one random Tuesday and realize your favorite idiosyncratic mom and pop store is suddenly a ubiquitous, sterile franchise? And you couldn't trace the steps of how it happened because you simply didn't have the words for the footprints.
It suggests that expanding your vocabulary is an act of civic awareness. If you cannot name the forces shaping your environment, you are powerless to engage with them, critique them, or resist them.
So keep pushing those linguistic boundaries. Do not settle for standard definition.
Get that 4K upgrade.
Because the next time you find yourself standing on that rain-slicked city street at midnight, feeling that heavy atmospheric shift vibrating in your chest, you won't just be feeling it, you'll be reading it.
You'll be actively decoding it.
Exactly. You'll be understanding your city and your place within it in glorious 4K resolution.